Hello, everybody, and welcome back into another edition of the Hockey Writers Podcast season preview show. Here at the Hockey Writers, we've got Montreal Canadiens on deck now, and a couple writers from the team here: Melissa Boyd, Blain, Potvin. First of all, Melissa, thanks for joining. Hockey's all just around the corner.
It is. Rookie camp's next week, and the guys are coming into town. So hockey's back.
It's coming. And also, Blain, thanks for joining the podcast. First time you've been on our show here.
Yeah, I was starting to feel left out.
Well, happy to have you on the podcast and our preview shows here. We're getting deep into it now. We've got almost 10 coming up. So once they're all released, we've got a bunch recorded, but they're coming. Once this one's released, you'll have a few. But let's get started with the Montreal Canadiens, who, everyone knows they got the first overall pick. So towards they were the last place team in the league. Coming off that Stanley Cup final appearance, and everyone knows all that, but we won't get too much into that. But we'll get into what's happening this season, and starting with the forwards, like we always do here, and with the new addition. So, Melissa, I want to start with you with Sean Monahan, who is the latest addition to the Canadiens, coming over from the Calgary Flames in that pretty much a cap dump trade. What are your expectations for Monahan? Is he just a guy that's just here for 1 year and he's going to be gone, or do they have more in store for him?
Yeah, well, I think he was probably the surprise move. I don't think, and it kind of, when it came out at first that it was the Habs picking him up, everyone, of course, was like, wait, how can they do that? They don't have any cap space. And then obviously we then found out about the Carey Price news. So then it made more sense. So it's actually a little bit of a surprise. Like if you had told me Sean Monahan would be a Hab this season, I would have probably told you like you're crazy. But I think, obviously I think the expectation is not necessarily that he regains his form from 4 or 5 years ago when he was scoring 30 goals and getting nominated for the Lady Byng and stuff like that. But I think he wants to prove that he still has something left, whether that's 15, 20 goals, maybe 40 points, whatever. But honestly, of all the UFAs, so the ones that could be traded at the deadline, I actually think I would say that maybe he's the one that they might want to bring back just because of the position he plays. He can play center and wing. He can just what he brings, a lot of leadership. So I think they feel like he's going to be a good fit in the locker room. So I don't think it's automatic to say that he's going to be traded at the deadline. I think that's probably the most likely thing. But I think for starters, I think the most important thing is that he can come back healthy and show that he has something left.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, it's been a couple of years since he was really a top line guy, but he's been dealing with injuries now. Both hips have surgery on him. So we'll see if that kind of makes him a good hockey player again. I don't know, but we'll see on what he does with the Canadiens. Moving over to you, Blain, and talking about another guy they got at the draft. That was just surprising when that trade happened. And Kirby Dach. And it seemed like it was a surprise to everyone on the draft floor when it did happen. What are your expectations for him? He just signed a contract. I believe it was today, that when we're recording, that is, signing a contract. So what are your expectations for Kirby Dach in his first season?
Well, yeah, it was a major shock to see him getting traded. A 21-year-old center being traded from a team rebuilding. That was weird. And trading him for a 13th overall pick, essentially. Good value for the Canadiens. As for what I expect from him this year, I think Dach, this is one of those years he really needs to take a step forward. He had a bad year last year. He says his wrist is feeling better. It's healthy. So if that's the case, then I expect to see him being able to play that 2C role offensively. The defensive side, he's going to have work to do. But if he's able to take those minutes, and even if his face-off percentages are weak, I mean, not as bad as last year's, but somewhere in like the 45% range, then I say that's a win. Especially if he's able to get about 40 points.
Mhm.
Yeah.
If he gets to that, for what he's being paid at 3.36 to the pie, I don't know, there's quite a few numbers there. But if he can get to 40 points, being paid what he is, I think that's essentially what a 40-point center gets, about $4 million. So he's within that range. And if he does beyond that, that's gravy.
Yeah. No, agreed. And the thing is he's young. Like, he's ridiculously
Very
young.
young.
And,
Yeah.
kind of fell out of favor in Chicago, I think. I mean, he wasn't, he started playing on more the bottom line, bottom six rather than the top six. And it just seemed like he kind of wore out his welcome maybe in Chicago. So moving to a new team, I don't know. It was a weird situation in Chicago. So moving on to another.
I think Chicago's going scorched earth so they can get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Agreed. Yeah.
I mean, they got rid of DeBrincat too, who was another young piece
Yeah.
that was could have been a huge part of that rebuild. So it wasn't just Dach. It was they're going scorched earth, exactly like you said, Blain.
For sure. So we'll see what happens with Dach. I think he's going to be a big piece in Montreal. He's still in that range of being in that rebuilding team and being able to contribute as a part of a core. So we'll see what happens. Back to you, Melissa, and talk about another addition, Evgenii Dadonov, who everyone knows with the trade stuff with where he was next to going to Anaheim, and now he was okay with going to Montreal. So he's now there. I know I asked you about him already on the podcast in the past, but for our viewers now that are watching, what do you think about Dadonov is expecting for him at the coming season?
Yeah, it was funny when they announced the trade. I said, "Are we sure that Montreal's not on?" Is like, really? That's surprising to me. But yeah, I mean, he's another guy who has something to prove, and it's funny. Like, you look at his, year-to-year stats. Like, the guy just scores 20 goals a year. Like, he's one of those perennial 20 goal scorers. Like, you can count on him for that. And actually, when he was a free agent 2 years ago, and I actually think maybe Blain wrote about him as a possible target for the Canadiens back then. And it's funny that like 2 years later, he's coming to Montreal. And I think, yeah, I agreed. Like, I thought he would be a good fit for the Canadiens back then. So it's funny that he's there now. And I actually think he could do something good. Like, they've been looking for a winger to play with Suzuki and Caufield. And I think he could be a good candidate to do that. If Slafkovsky, because everyone's obviously saying like, well, Slafkovsky is going to go there. But I mean, if he's not ready yet, which I'm not sure he will be, I think he's a good fit. So I think he's going to get good minutes. And he's, I'm sure they're going to pair him with some good, good players, maybe Dach, who knows. But I just know that he's offensively gifted, and it's something that the Canadiens have been missing. So I think he's definitely a guy I could see right now. I don't think he has any trade value, but I think by the deadline, he might actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And, this is an interesting group of forwards that the Canadiens brought in, because a lot of pundits were kind of speculating that they might be in a rebuild situation as well. But it seems like they're still trying to build for the future. So, Blain, I got to ask you, with Nick Suzuki and Kirby Dach down the middle right now, are these, both young guys, are these the future of the Canadiens? Is this the 1-2 punch that they build around?
I think they're hopeful that this is going to be something that they can build with. But if they do end up with a top 10 pick this year, I think 8 out of the 10 are centers. So there's still more coming. Owen Beck, this past summer, he's another center on his way. Jan Myshak, he's another center. So I don't think they're putting all their eggs in this basket, but they would be happy if that's the way it turned out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Eric
like I
Dubois
said,
is coming in 2 years, so it's
right? Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I've heard even sooner, maybe this year, right?
Could be. We'll see.
He pulled a slap shot move. Trade me right effing now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. But I mean, that's a pretty good two guys to kind of,
Yeah.
if that's the case, pretty good to build around. Let's talk about a young guy that, Prospect Corner kind of dubbed the Calder Trophy winner at the beginning of last season. Never happened, but he did score a ton of goals after St. Louis took over. And this is Cole Caufield, if you didn't know already of who I'm describing. Melissa, what do you think about him? I mean, he's going to have a full season with St. Louis now. What do you expect from him?
Yeah, it's hard. Like, you're like, can he keep up that pace from the second half? There's no way it's going to be as bad as the first half of last season. So we'll put that away. But I think, honestly, like, I don't want to be the one that projects like, oh, he's going to score 40 this year. I just, we'll see. I mean, if he hits 25 to 30, I'd be really happy and continues to grow. And it seems like from what I've seen, he's really worked on his fitness this summer. Been in the gym a ton. He looks, I know from the photos I've seen, I'm like, whoa, okay. Cole got some muscle there. So we'll see, but I think the most important thing is, his progression, that he continues to build his chemistry with Suzuki, because I really do think that's going to be a duo for the next 10 years, hopefully. So yeah, but 25 to 30 for me is where I think he'll hit.
I think that'd be a good recovery season for him after what he went through last year and a decent sophomore year. So that wouldn't be a bad thing to see him hit right around that. All right, so going from one rookie that was under a microscope last year to a rookie that is certainly under a microscope this year, Blain, I got to get your thoughts on the number 1 overall pick, Slafkovsky. Is he making the opening night lineup, and who is he playing with?
Oh, he'll play on his own. He's going to score 10 goals, 15 goals that game.
1 on 5. He doesn't need the help.
He's the size of 5 guys. Let him go.
Right?
No, I do expect him to start the season with the Canadiens. I fully expect him to be there. I mean, with Byron and I don't see them starting the year, so they're going to need someone to play on that left side. Where he begins in the preseason, we're definitely going to see him with Suzuki and Caufield.
Yeah.
I think that's essentially part of why they drafted him, because they see him in that role, so they're going to try him out there. If he does well in the preseason, I can see that being something they give him a little bit of time with at the start of the regular season. But I don't know if he's going to complete the season in Montreal. It's going to be hard to say, and we'll know by the time he hits 40 games. If he gets to around 40 games, that's the year where that's the point where a year towards his UFA status is going to be burned. So they may decide prior to that to send him down, unless he's really tearing it up. Otherwise, I think Laval is probably the better bet over a longer period in this season to really let him build on his game a little bit. Let him touch the puck more, learn the North American game with a little bit more time and space.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And that's the thing. You don't want to rush this guy. He's going to be a heck of a player in the NHL. But I mean, he's shown he can play against, everywhere he's played internationally, he's thrived. So, it seems like he's ready, but you don't want to assume that that's what's going to be the case. And then all of a sudden he doesn't do well, like, Caufield happened last year. So, we'll see what happens with him, but I'm excited to see him. Even if it's just preseason, I'm excited.
Just look up
to see what he does.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks way bigger than whatever he's listed at right now.
Oh, geez,
He was huge.
Yeah,
oh my
I
God,
saw a photo
walking past them.
Saw a photo of him at the upper deck signing from the other day, and he's towering over everyone. Like everyone interviewing him, he's towering over everyone.
Well, it's funny, actually, the Canadiens released a draft, behind the scenes draft video, and there's a clip where Ken Hughes is on the phone with Kirby Dach just after the trade was announced. So anyways, he says, welcome. And he goes, yeah, you're going to play some offense and, you're a big guy, but guess what? We just drafted a guy who's even bigger than you. They're like, oh.
That's
And what
awesome.
kills me the most is this: he's so young.
Yeah.
Like he just had his braces taken off.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
younger than my
That's
kids.
hilarious. That's hilarious. Okay.
Yeah, he
That's
made sure
awesome.
they
Oh
were
my
ready
gosh.
to come off before the draft, apparently. Like, he wanted them off before.
For his first draft photo. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
that's good. That's
We got
good.
a legitimate high schooler here.
All right. Melissa, back to you, and talking about a guy he's been hurt a lot and
Mhm.
not in the lineup. Jonathan Drouin,
Mhm.
apparently healthy coming into training camp. We don't know, but what are your expectations for him? Is he just, he will be traded by the deadline, and this is it's not going to be in Montreal next season?
Yeah, well, the thing is, there's, as I'm sure you guys know too, there's a lot of layers to Jonathan Drouin's tenure in Montreal. Unfortunately for him, there's a lot going on there. He is by far the most heavily criticized player on the roster. And you know what? If I was him, I would want this season to be over with as fast as humanly possible to get out of here. I actually saw Jonathan Drouin a few weeks ago at the tennis tournament I was covering in Montreal, and he was in good spirits, like he always is. That's the thing that's so, he loves being a Canadian, and that's really sort of the sad part about it, is that on the ice it hasn't really worked out for him. But I actually think, like, he seems really motivated. He wants to finish on a high note, and he hasn't really had the chance to play for Marty St. Louis yet because he was injured last year. So I think, I know this question's going to come up later, but I actually think, he's going to have a big boost in value, and I could definitely see him being moved at the deadline for a nice return, because he's a really good player, and I really do think he still has something to offer, but I don't think it's in Montreal.
I think, I'm rooting for Jonathan Drouin to have a really big bounce back season, because what he has been through and everything that he's dealt with over the past few years has just been unfortunate and just unlucky from his perspective, and I know the fans were expecting a lot more out of him. And so, it's a tough market. Montreal expects winners, and when you're not producing, you get let know. You find out very quickly.
Yeah.
All right, Blaine. Well, I got to ask you about another guy that's been in the trade rumors quite a bit, and this is Josh Anderson. So, do you think he will be dealt, or is he still in the plans for the rebuild moving forward?
I fully believe he's part of their plans. He's a guy that they really like. He's kind of a unique type of player. There's not a lot of power forwards in the NHL.
Yeah.
Not real ones anyway.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he is starting to get a little bit older, but at the same time, he has leadership quality. He's able to keep up with the young guys, play that physical style that they need for creating some space for some of the smaller guys. Like I can see him on a line with Suzuki and Caufield. But that all being said, if another GM at the trade deadline shows up and really plows Kent Hughes, he's gone. He'll trade him. Everything rests on the value. He has a value set for every single player. And Anderson's no different. I just feel that the value he's put on him is much higher. So if a GM is willing to meet that ridiculous height, he'll trade him.
Yeah. I always liked Josh Anderson's game, and I just had to look up how old he is. He's only 28 right now, so he's still got quite a few years potentially that he could still contribute. Again, like you said, being a power forward, their shelf life tends to be a little bit lesser than other finesse players, but I mean, he can bring a lot to that Montreal team.
Yeah, I agree. I like Josh Anderson too. I mean, he's one of those. He's a very rare talent in the NHL right now.
Yeah.
So does everything. He hits. He can score. He big guy can score in different ways too. So and he was really big in that playoff run for the Canadiens too. So
Yeah,
he still has a lot of value. I think but like you said, Blain, if someone GM comes along and he'll trade him because the rebuild. He has a vision for what he wants this team to look like, and if it furthers that, he will. I for sure think he will trade him too.
Anytime you can get return value on a player like him at his age, you have to pull that trigger.
Yeah, especially coming up in this draft. If you're going to get another pick for this coming draft, like we've said on multiple shows already, you get them.
Strongest draft in a long time. You stockpile as much as you can.
Okay, let's on to another smaller player and another guy that's been injury prone, Melissa and Brendan Gallagher. Heart and soul player for the Canadiens ever since hit his prime, and it's kind of hard to see him kind of decline because he's not the 30-goal scorer. He's not that anymore. What are your expectations for Gallagher? Still getting paid quite a bit too.
Yeah, it's definitely a big year for him. He has to show that he still has something left. He has to show management, and he has to, I think, show it to himself too. Like last year was like, we'll give him a mulligan, and he's had a full summer to recover, hopefully, rehab his whatever. I'm sure he has a million different injuries, but it is a big year for him. And actually, I was just thinking today I should probably write an article about how big of a year it is for him.
Yeah.
Because I think this season will determine how much longer he's a Hab. I think they gave him another chance this year and didn't put him on the block. Because he is, as you said, he's the heart and soul of this team. He is, in my opinion, he should be the next captain. I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but in my opinion, he is the captain of this team. And it's a huge loss. Like, it's a huge decision to say, okay, we need to move on from this guy. So yeah, I think this is a huge year for him. He's got to show. Not like you said, not 30 goals necessarily, but he's got to be the player that we know he is, that we know and opposing teams hate and we love. Yeah, he's got to be that player again.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's in a tough situation, but he's got to be able to contribute as well. It's kind of like a Josh Anderson situation almost for him. All right, Blain. Looking at the Canadiens forward group, about half of their forward are around 25 or younger. So which of these young forwards do you see taking the biggest step forward this coming season?
Oh, they're out of the 70,000 that they have.
Can you please narrow that down to one?
Yeah. But I think the biggest step forward is someone we mentioned already, Dach. He is poised or should be on pace for a career year. And he might be a little stunted on that case, but I think that he's going to take a massive leap forward from what we've seen from him in the last couple of seasons and play more to the Kirby Dach that was seen in the playoff bubble.
Yeah.
If he plays to that level, that's a massive step.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, agreed. And that's, Dach's going to be, like I say, he's of course going to be under the microscope in Montreal. The players are. So we'll see if he steps up and can start realizing that potential that when he was drafted so high. So we will see. Okay, to finish off the forward group, I'm not going to ask how they match up in the division because that's kind of, we all know that they don't.
They're in their own division.
But let's ask this question though: how long until they are knocking on the door with the contenders. I mean, how long is this rebuild going to take for the forward group, Melissa?
Well, I can tell you that Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon hope it's not that long. Where they're not looking at scorch the earth like the Blackhawks. I will say, considering also their cap situation, which they'll get a ton of relief next summer because they have a ton of UFAs.
Yep.
I will say within 2 years, they are starting back up. They'll be like, you know, I would say their forward group right now is pretty respectable.
It's okay.
It's not it's not their weakness. They have bigger weaknesses, but I think, I say within 2 years, we're back on the upswing.
Yeah. Blain, what do you think?
I agree with Melissa. I mean, the development that they're starting to build towards, you've got a lot of really good young prospects. They should be ready to be taking a step forward. You got all that cap space. And I think that this coming draft in 2023, if they end up with a high draft pick and somehow land someone like a Fantilli, well, that just, that skyrockets that makes it much faster. More of a New York Rangers type of rebuild, which, I mean, I think Jeff Gordon was part of that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I agree with Melissa. 2 years.
2 years. There we go.
Well, I think definitely, you know, 2 to 3 years is in the window because the Canadiens are likely going to get another firepower up front from this upcoming draft. I mean, you know, barring just the incredible season that's unforeseen and a lot of lottery, you know, unluckiness, they're going to get a really good draft pick. So, you know, I think this forward group, like you said, is very respectable already, and they're young. They're very young.
Yeah.
And they have a very good chance to gel and grow together as a group. All right. Well, we're done talking the forwards now. Let's move over to the defense. Melissa, I want to talk to you about a new incoming defenseman this season, Michael Matheson. What are your expectations for the 22-23 season for him?
Yeah, I you know, it's interesting. I think the return on Jeff Petrie shocked a lot of people. But I mean, you have to understand how the business works. Like, they weren't going to be able to unfortunately, weren't going to be able to give him away for just, you know, a pick and thanks. But no, I have, you know, I like the fit here. Again, they want to play up tempo, offensive style hockey. They're not about, you know, playing, you know, trap, and they want to go up and down, and he fits that. And like Jeff Petrie has only pure puck moving defenseman, and Mike Matheson's not as good, but I think can fill that void a little bit. So you know what, he's from Montreal. I think, you know, and I just think he's going to really enjoy it. He's going to embrace it. He's going to thrive in it. And I think, I mean, if, you know, I know everybody kind of remembers his Florida days, which weren't as good, but he really thrived in Pittsburgh. And I think he'll do the same. I think he'll do the same here. And he's obviously going to have a huge role on defense, given what they've got is not a lot. So he's going to have a huge role. So I think it'll be good for him.
So I mean, I know Matheson from he body slammed Elias Pettersson way back. So that's what I remember from him.
So Matthew hates him.
It doesn't take much to body slam him. I mean, that's barely 50 pounds. I mean, come on.
Okay. Let's talk about the defense doesn't have a lot of veterans anymore. So they're going to have a lot of young guys. So who do you think the youngest young defenseman will take the major step forward this season, Blain?
Well, considering that between the three main names, there's 8 NHL games to them, or sorry, 15 NHL games between them. I It's hard to say which one's going to have the biggest, but I think Justin Barron's going to have the best chance.
Yeah.
Being a right-handed shot, and that the Canadian system is bereft of right-hand shots at the moment, especially puck movers. I think he'll probably have the best chance of taking that big step forward. He's an excellent skater. He's strong defensively. He's an excellent transitional player. And he's got some offense to his game, so I think he's in the right fit for that new system that the Canadians are bringing in. So, yeah, I think he'll have the best chance. The rest of them are probably going to rotate through on a rotation, and they'll all get a shot, but they're all left-handed shots.
Yeah.
It's always nice to have that right-handed puck-moving defenseman, in your arsenal, because it just opens up the power play a whole lot more, and just the 5-on-5 breakout as well. You're able to break out from both sides. All right. So, Melissa, I want to get your thoughts on not only this season, but moving forward. What major pieces do you see the Canadians building around on this defensive core?
Yeah, definitely. Like Blain said, I think definitely Justin Barron is one. I think Kaden Guhle is another. I see Guhle as still like the future top 4. Just put him there, and that's where he's going to be for hopefully as long as Shea Weber kind of thing. So I think those are the two big pieces on D. And hopefully, fingers crossed, Lane Hudson, because I'm really excited about his potential. So we'll see there, but it's a bit too early to tell. But like Blain said, I think the rest we'll see. I think it's too early to say that they're going to be like fixtures there, but they've got some depth on the left side, so we'll see which ones come through, and it's that depth that allowed them to trade Alex Romanov. So we'll see which ones come to the cream. Which cream comes to the top?
Like it.
Yeah, no, I agree with all those pieces. I think Guhle is the biggest
I like
piece
Guhle
on
a
that
lot.
defense. I really like him too. Okay, let's talk about some trade bait, and this is going to be talk all throughout the season about anyone who could be traded from this team. Of the veteran defensemen, I had a Matheson in there, even though they just got him. Happens where guys are just brought in and
1-year
traded.
deal, and yep.
So what do you think about these 3 veterans? So you got Edmondson, Savard, and Matheson. Who's the biggest trade bait of those 3, or the most likely to be moved?
Well, I mean, Matheson is kind of the player they want to. He's the type of player they want, so I see them keeping him. Savard, the style of game that he plays and the speed that he's at now, I don't see too many teams being interested in him, especially with a couple more years on a contract. So it's de facto Edmondson. He's got another year at a reasonable cap hit.
Yeah.
He's got a Stanley Cup ring. He's made a run to the Cup final. He's known to be a very good mentor for young players, while also being able to eat a ton of minutes and not be an issue. So he's a perfect fit for any team looking for a cup. So I can see him being someone that a veteran GM is looking to add, especially even St. Louis may want him back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He seemed to fit in really well in St. Louis, and so I could see them, especially if they're making a push toward the end of the year, kind of coming back around to kicking the tires on getting them back. All right, this one's going to go to both of you. I'm going to start with Melissa first. We already talked about the forwards as a core. Now let's talk about the defensive core as a whole going into the 2022-23 season. What are your thoughts on the Montreal Canadiens defense, Melissa?
Oof. It was funny. I was exchanging text messages with my brother a few weeks ago, and we were like, going back and forth on pairings. And I just said to him at one point, I was like, Jesus isn't very good. No, I mean, I think one of my predictions before the puck drop is that they will add a right shot D, either whether it's picking someone up off waivers or I don't know, but I do think they're going to add there because I just don't see them going into the season with so few veterans, considering how many young guys they're trying to integrate in and put them in the right spot. The one thing they've been adamant about not doing is rushing somebody into the NHL if they're not ready. So I just think that, so I will say I will reserve judgment until right shot D veteran player comes. But right now, not so good.
I like that, right? You're like, hey, we're still got a couple of weeks to training camp. Maybe something will happen. Please. All right, Blain, I'm going to ask you the same question there. What are your thoughts on the Montreal Canadiens defensive core as a whole going into this season?
Yes, it is a whole. No, it's definitely going to be one of their Achilles tendons. It's just not it's not that good. More so because of the lack of experience. So I feel like they'll end the season somewhere around the bottom third in goals allowed, but way better than they were last year, which was horrible. I think it was a team record for most goals allowed.
I think it was actually.
But I agree with Melissa. They're gonna be looking to add another right-hand D. Maybe it's Nils Lundqvist. That's been rumored, but they've got that room on the salary cap, and they've got the first pick in the waiver wire.
Yeah.
And sometimes after training camps, there's a lot of really good young players with some experience that because they didn't surpass someone on the depth chart, they get sent down. And the Canadiens are poised to pick up the best scraps they can find.
Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. So that's a good point with the waiver wire, that there's so much that teams try to sneak down after training camp, thinking that no one's going to pick them up, and and teams like that grab them. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Okay, let's move to the goaltending, which no more Carey Price. So he is probably not going to play the rest of play the season. He's likely done in Montreal in the NHL. What do you expect from the tandem of Jake Allen and Samuel Montembeault, Melissa? What do you think?
Well, I'll say the Habs really missed Jake Allen last year. I mean, obviously they missed Carey Price more, but they really did miss Jake Allen last year. He's really a stabilizing force back there. He's a great leader, just a great teammate. And, the Habs are actually really lucky to have him. I think he's a real luxury to have. So it's going to be better than last year, the goaltending, but it'll be as Blain said, like the whole back end is going to be an failure. But I think they're going to at least make it where the game's not over after the first period. So I think Jake Allen was really frustrated last year with all the bad luck that he had, and I think he's going to be really primed to show to come back strong. And I know a lot of people kind of him and haw at Sam Montembeault, but you know what? I think he's a talented goalie, and I think with less pressure this year and Jake Allen there to help him out a little bit more, I think he might do okay. Again, he's a good filler for now.
The Montreal Canadiens will win games as long as they don't leave their offensive zone. Is what I'm I mean, not a horrible strategy, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Other teams use that as a defensive strategy.
Just get it over their red line. They're screwed.
5-4 games are entertaining, so
That is true.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Matt mentioned Carey Price. He seems to have just been a fixture on the Montreal Canadiens for ever, it seems like. He's been there for many, many years. He's been just always one of the best goaltenders in the league year in and year out. So what does the future of the goaltending position look like for the Montreal Canadiens, Blain?
That's a tough picture to look ahead to. I fully extended. I think because Primo needs a full season in the AHL to really build his game. I mean, he had a horrible season in the NHL last year because he was just thrown to the wolves.
Yeah.
They had no other choice. He was the last guy on an NHL contract that was available. They were playing ECHL players, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
So he wasn't given the best chance. But then he had that great playoff run with Laval, putting up a .930 save percentage. So a full year in the AHL, maybe a little bit longer. And this is a kid that might be able to be a starter in the NHL. But it's going to take time. That's why I think Jake Allen's probably going to get extended. Jacob Dobes looked really good in the NCAA. Dykau over in Europe looks great, but these are guys that are going to take years.
Yeah.
So I don't think goaltending really should be the focus for the Canadiens until they can sort out a really solid top 6 forward group, depth at center, a couple more really good puck moving defensemen, then focus on the goaltenders. That's where, again, I still feel Jake Allen's going to get extended, and he's going to probably be in Montreal for another 2-3 years beyond this one.
Okay, I could see that.
I can see that. Yeah.
Push it down the road, let it kind of figure itself out over the next couple of years, and then build around one of your young guys. Because as we all know, goaltenders tend to take a couple more years to develop than regular players. Obviously, there are exceptions to those rules, but yeah, I think you're absolutely right there, Blain.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Goaltenders are drafted, and then it's very rare to see a guy going like Carey Price come in at 19 and come play in the NHL. So you have to be pretty exceptional to do that. Okay, let's talk about the coaching, because Martin St. Louis is coming into his first full season as head coach. Gets a full training camp, all that stuff. So, Melissa, what are your expectations for St. Louis behind the bench in 2022-23?
I'm really excited to see just kind of what type of things he implements. Like you said, with the full training camp, full summer to plan ahead, and just sort of we have a very good idea what style of play they're, how they're going to play, but I'm just excited for him to see what he's going to do with all these new young guys too. We saw just what he did with Caufield in, a handful of games. So, I think, my expectations is that it sort of continues. Again, this season is not about wins and losses. It's about player development, and he's a huge part of that. And that's what my expectations is I hope that, these players that they really believe in and they really think that Marty can unlock their potential. So Dach being a perfect example. I just, that's what I'm looking for, is that I want him to be able to get the best out of these guys.
Yeah. Well, I loved the hiring when they hired him. He had basically no experience in any professional league at all, but smart NHL player. So that's not all players like Wayne Gretzky couldn't succeed as a coach, but not everyone can do it, but it seems like St. Louis is on the right path. So Blain, I want to get your thoughts on St. Louis in his first full season behind the bench in Montreal.
Well, I think by the end of the year, all the players are going to have massive quads. So
that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, he had no real pro experience, but he came in with a plan.
Yeah.
He knew what kind of game he wants these players to play. And it's a very modern style. It's forward looking and it's offensive and it's, exciting. It emulates the game that he played to a certain extent, maybe to the point he wanted to play but couldn't, because back in those days, the good old days, way back when, it was harder to play that style. So I I'm expecting the team to continue what they were doing under him last season. But with more young guys, there's going to be a lot of mistakes, but my God, it's going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, Matt, I love that hiring when they made him and when they made it last year. And I mean, you could see it right away. Even like, I think it was just a week or two in, he was already working with Caufield on the power play on that little fake slap shot, stepped in and scored. And he scored that night. So, I mean, it's just, you could tell there's energy there, which is huge for a new coach to be brought in. Like, you need that. So I think it's going to be a fun season for the Canadiens, at least in terms of watching the coach develop as well as the players.
And being that he's a hockey Hall of Famer, the guys will listen a little bit.
That doesn't hurt. It's a little bit of street cred there, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to move over to our quick fire round, which for those new to the show, or Melissa and Blain joining us today, we're going to fire questions at you both, and you both are going to answer with 1 to 3 sentences. Can be just a one-word answer. It could be a little bit of an explanation, but we want to keep these nice and quick and flowing through. So, Melissa, I'm going to start with you. What's the biggest storyline or question mark going into 2022-23?
I think player development, progress. How much can Marty St. Louis get out of these guys? That's the biggest storyline.
Absolutely. Blain, over to you. Biggest storyline or question mark?
I think the biggest question mark is going to be that right side of the D. Who are they going to target? Is it going to be a trade, or are they going to go off the waiver wire? I think that's the biggest one.
I love it.
Nice. All right, Melissa, 1 or 2 breakout stars.
Justin Barron and Kirby Dach.
Nice.
Love it. Yep.
Blaine, what do you think?
Well, I said Dach earlier, so I'm going to go with 2 others because I like to spread it around. That way I can say it was right. I think Gooley is going to really take a step forward. And it's tough. I want to say Slafkovsky because it's so obvious, but I think Caufield. Caufield's really going to shine this year.
I think he's poised for a big breakout season, so absolutely. All right, Blain, one player that needs a bounce back from last season.
Drouin.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's not that he's bad. He puts up 50 points a season on average, like points per game wise. But my God, he's always broken.
Melissa,
and I live in Halifax. We love him here.
Melissa, same question to you. Who's the player from the Canadiens that needs to bounce back from last season?
Well, I love all the love that Joe's getting on the podcast tonight. He deserves it. I'm going to say, I mentioned him earlier, Brendan Gallagher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good one.
Needs a good one. Good year.
All right, Blaine, X Factor. One player could be an X Factor this season.
Joel Edmondson. I think Joel Edmondson's leadership in the room. He's not going to put up a lot of points, but in that room, I think he's really going to gel that group together.
Mm-hmm.
I like that pick.
Yeah. All right, Melissa, X Factor.
I'm going to say Jake Allen, because again, for the same reasons, really, Joel Edmondson, he's a great veteran on the team, great leadership in the locker room. And I think he's really going to keep on the ice. He's going to keep everybody sort of really composed and, we're not going to see the breakdowns I think that we saw last year. Hopefully not.
Right. Fingers crossed. All right. Melissa, pick one rookie or prospect that could surprise and make the roster out of training camp.
Well, I guess it's not going to be a big surprise because Blaine just mentioned him earlier, but Kaden Gooley for me, I think is going to make the opening night roster. I actually thought he was going to make it last year, but they decided not to give him, but he was pretty close. So I'm going to say this year he does it.
I agree. I think last year he was close, and then you could tell his game developed a ton over the season. So great call out. Blaine, over to you. One rookie or prospect that will make the roster out of training camp.
I think Yolonen. I think Yolonen's going to push the envelope during the training camp and steal a job.
I love it.
Nice. All right, back over to you, Melissa. What other players should fans be watching this season? We have not mentioned a lot of guys, but one we haven't mentioned.
Well, Blain just mentioned him. So
Took her
yes,
answer.
I was gonna go with a couple of Val Rocket players that we don't maybe talk about a lot, but are on the cusp of the NHL. So yes, Ylonen is one, and I think Raphael Harvey-Pinard is another one. Who I could totally see him, like, with all these extra forwards they have, I could just see him being like, screw it, I'm coming in, like being extra motivated to make a strong impression. So yeah, he's somebody to watch too this season, I think.
All right, Blain, over to you. Someone we haven't not mentioned yet.
Jan Mysak. I think
yes.
he had an excellent World Championships. He's due to join Laval, and I think by the midseason he's going to get his call up.
Oh, I'm excited to see him. Yeah, he's going to be good.
All right, Blain, who will lead the team in scoring for forwards?
I'm going to stick with Suzuki.
Suzuki.
Yeah.
Melissa, over to you. Forwards, who will lead the team in scoring?
Yeah, I have to say Suzuki. I don't really see. I mean, the other thing too is he's pretty healthy, knock on wood. So he doesn't really miss a lot of games either. So I'm going to go with Suzuki.
All right. Coming right back at you, Melissa. Who's going to lead the team in scoring for defense?
Mike Matheson.
Ooh. Blain, defensive scoring leader?
I agree.
Okay.
I agree. Mike Matheson.
All right.
All right.
That would be huge to replace Petrie.
That's saying a lot about the Canadiens.
That's also
that doesn't
true.
show much. Yeah.
By leading the team to points, I meant 15 points.
All right, Blain, one player that could be traded before the deadline.
You can name half the team, but if Drouin is healthy through the season, I think they trade him at the deadline for a good return.
Yeah.
All right, Melissa, what do you think?
I'm gonna go with another forward, and I'm gonna say Dadonov.
Yep. We probably could have asked who would not get traded.
Who would not be traded?
It'd be a shorter list.
Yeah.
All right. This is the fun one, right? Give me one bold prediction or hot take for the Montreal Canadiens for the 2022-23 season. Blain, starting with you.
Hot take. I think they're going to win the season series against the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh,
3-1.
Yeah.
That is hot, my man. I love it.
That's the same as making the playoffs.
All right. Melissa, one bold prediction or hot take for the Montreal Canadiens this season?
I guess it's not so hot or bold, but I'm going to say Jake Allen resigns instead of getting traded.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Oh, it could be bold. That's for sure. Okay. Where do you, Blain? Now, for the final question, where do you see the Canadiens finishing in the standings?
From 22nd to 30th, somewhere in that range. There will be picking in the top 10.
All right.
Okay.
Melissa, what do you think where they're finishing?
I agree. I think we're destined for another top 10 pick. So yeah, somewhere in that range, 20 to 30. And yeah, it's going to be fun, but it's going to be a roller coaster.
All right.
For sure.
All right. Who are the two teams finishing below the Canadiens?
Well, Blackhawks, one.
Yeah, they like we said, scorched earth.
Wow.
Yeah, scorched earth.
Any other predictions?
We're gonna dunk on the Arizona Coyotes again.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
We promised Haynes we wouldn't, so we'll just leave it at the Blackhawks and we'll move on. How
you know
about
what?
that?
They gave the Canadiens a favor last season by winning their last two games of the regular season, so the Canadiens could finish 32nd.
All right.
We won't dump on them.
Maybe you'll return the favor to them this year.
Yeah, maybe.
The Coyotes are business in the front and party in the back, playing in the Mullet Arena. So
That's such a perfect arena name.
That's so good. It's so good. All right. Finish off the show. We always do here at the Hockey Writers Podcast. We have articles of the day. We won't pick any this time, but Melissa, I'm going to give a shout out for an article. It can be your own, but from the Montreal Canadiens team, an article you want to shout out.
I picked one of Blain's actually. So I think the last one he wrote actually about Nils Lundqvist. He spoke about it earlier as him being a potential fit for the Canadiens, and I totally agree.
Yeah.
With given the fact that the Jeff Gorton connection, and that they're probably interested in all of the Rangers prospects, I would assume, but definitely, for sure, they're going to be in on that. And in the article, Blain explains why he's going to be a great fit and what could a trade potentially look like. So
yeah,
definitely check that out.
Yeah, that's
right.
a good article there, Blain.
Yeah. All right, Blain, over to you. Article you want to shout out from the Canadiens writing team.
Totally anything by me. No, it's the getting to know series that Melissa's been doing on all the new players coming in. I really liked it.
Yeah.
Anyone who hasn't seen these people, because I mean, most hockey fans only follow the one team.
Yeah.
So when a new player comes in, Melissa's work on the getting to know them parts, they're well worth the read.
Yeah,
Thank
those are a great series as well.
Yeah, I love reading those because even though I do know a lot about the players, there are some things I don't.
Yeah,
like little things that I never knew were. So,
and I'm always amazed, like people are
see.
genuinely interested. Like I remember last year when they signed Mike Hoffman.
Yeah.
And Mike Hoffman's not super interesting. And I remember feeling like, oh my God, what am I gonna say? And then put it out and like got tons of comments like, oh, I didn't know this about him.
Yeah.
Like, oh really? And I'm like, okay.
There's the guy we never
cool.
mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
gonna
true.
be interesting to see what he does this season too. All right. Well, thanks, Blain. Thanks, Melissa, for joining the show and previewing the Montreal Canadiens season, even though it may not be that good. But you may be surprised. You never know. There was one year Montreal finished last the previous year, and then they went up and made the playoffs. So you never know until the puck drops. So we will see how it kind of all plays out. But on paper, but hockey's not played on paper. So it's going to be interesting to see how they play. And just to watch the young guys. That's what I like about the rebuilding teams. You get to watch all the young rookies, young prospects, young guys play. So, and everyone knows I love that because I cover prospects. So it's going to be exciting either way. It doesn't matter if they win or lose. Okay. Well, that's another season preview show here. And we'll have another one coming up pretty soon. We're having one almost every day lately. So to get right up to the season, but thanks for joining us for another one, and make sure you're checking out all the previews on the YouTube channel if you're so inclined to watch any of the other previews. But thanks for joining us. So make sure you're hitting that like button and subscribing to the YouTube channel, Morning Skate at morningskate.io. There's a link in the description there. And we will see you next time on another season preview show in the Hockey Writers Podcast.